Hello everybody, welcome back, happy Saturday. I apologize it took me so long to get to lesson 2 because I was waiting for my new mic so my sound quality was better. I did get it, and of course it took so long because Amazon decided it needed to be late for the first time in forever since I've ordered anything. So again, sorry about that guys, but today's lesson is going to be about idea inspiration, brainstorming, where to keep your notes and that inspiration. So let's get started. Before I jump right into this lesson, I do want to send my condolences to the family of Gabby Petito. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but basically Brian Laundrie, her fiance, arrived home without her. They were doing a cross-country road trip in a van, and he arrived home without her. And then a few days later, they did find her body at Spread Creek Dispersed Campground. So I do want to send my condolences out to them. Also, if you happen to see this dude anywhere, this is Brian Laundrie. This is her boyfriend, fiance, which basically is running from the cops now, and they haven't seen him since September 14th, supposedly. So keep your eyes out for him. He does have an arrest warrant right now, not for the murder, but for the unauthorized use of Gabby Petito's things, so like a credit card or a debit card. So keep your eyes out for him, and again, I just want to say, I'm sorry, she's in a better place now, out of that abusive relationship. Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about is where to keep your ideas and inspiration. As a writer, I'm always thinking about my story. I'm always thinking about writing and things to write about, but sometimes I am in the middle of doing something. I'm at work, I don't have access to my list on my computer, and then suddenly I got a big idea of inspiration. So we're going to talk about kind of where to keep those ideas of inspiration, what to do with them, and then toward the very end we're going to talk about how to brainstorm. So the first method of keeping your idea and inspiration is obviously just a writer's journal. This writer's journal I have used for all of my boot camps, the teen author boot camp that I was talking about, all of my story ideas, and brainstorming. So I'll show you guys what this looks like. Just some random sketches. Obviously this person is beautiful. I have no idea how to draw faces even though I'm becoming an art teacher. So just lots of inspiration, lots of scribbles. My handwriting's really bad because if I bring this somewhere I work on it, I want to write that idea down super quickly. So some of the things that I would, write down are if I see a dream catcher and I think it's really cool and I think a character could use it or something, I would draw the dream catcher that I see. So these are just notes and drawings, and you don't always have to, write things down. You can always do a sketch. Even if you come up with a little thing, a little amulet that someone has and you have an image of it in your mind, you want to write that down, you want to draw it because you don't want to lose that. So yeah, that's the idea of a journal, is to just keep whatever the heck you want in there. It doesn't need to look good. This was a setting that I really liked, and I drew it because I was like, holy cow, something cool could happen with a character right there. This was the beautiful kids art at my writing camp that I participate in every summer. Some more of them. Look at that. Look at how beautiful their artwork is. And then I also practiced some script writing in here. So again, if you have you hear a couple over talking or people over talking, you're like, that was a really interesting conversation. I want to have that be in my story. Write that whole thing down. You just gotta be low about it, or else they're like, why the hell are you writing my conversation down? But yeah, so you guys can always keep them in a funky little journal like this. And I suggest that especially if you're at home because you have more space to handwrite what you want down. While a journal is really awesome to have, you might not be able to take it everywhere with you, and sometimes you might even forget it. So if you have a cellular device, if you have a phone, a computer, you're going to want to have a place to keep the notes on there as well. So here are just a few of the apps and stuff that I've figured out that I use a lot. So the number one digital app that I do use is actually connected to your Google account if you have one, so just your Gmail account. It is Google Docs, so basically you can keep whatever you want in there. It's just like Word, but it's connected to your Google account. And basically, the one that I keep on here is just all about my story, the one that I'm currently writing, my novel. So Google Docs is super helpful. It transfers from one device to the other. It can be on your computer, it can be on your phone. You can also share it with people, super easy. Just share it with their email, so if you want somebody to read over or edit it, it's easy in that way. If you're using Google Docs on a computer, it's normally accessible through the Chrome browser. It's in a couple of squares on the top right corner when you're searching stuff out. Click that, it's like a drop-down menu-ish, and it just comes up with the little icon that you look for, which is the Google Docs icon. It's also, available on the Play Store app so that you can get it on your phone, and it's the same icon there. The second one is pretty specifically for your phone, but it's basically the just default notes app that comes with your phone. I know there's a specific one for iPhone. I know there's a specific one just for Samsung, Android. So this is mine right here, just this little It's Samsung Notes. Make a note right there and just write your ideas in there, and then you have that on your phone, so you can just go in there and write stuff down. It just isn't transferable from your computer to your phone to your computer. One of the apps that is interchangeable between devices is called Evernote. It is one of those ones that kind of pressures you to get a free trial of the premium version, but the simple version that you can download, the free version, is just as good. So when you download Evernote, you can find it on the Play Store and stuff, but it's just this little elephant icon right here. It looks the same on the computer. But basically, it just looks like there's some fun stuff you can do in there. You can add pictures, media, if you really want to. If you don't have any of the apps, you don't have your journal with you, you're like, oh crap, I got a really cool idea, you can always do the classic text yourself with the information. Kind of moving away from that digital aspect, taking notes on apps, on computers and phones, we have physical sticky notes. This is a big one for me. I love safety notes. Nice. English is hard. So, sticky notes. I will write my ideas on them. If I have a smaller idea, I'll use a smaller one so I don't use up a whole one of my post-it notes. But I'll just line them up on my drawers or my wall, all the ideas that I want. So, you've got just your regular sticky notes, got your small one, and then I found these online. They're super cool. So, if you have printed out part of your story or something, and you don't want to cover it with a big old sticky note, there's actually such a thing as, transparent sticky notes. This is the coolest thing ever. I definitely use those now, especially if I print off a part of my story. So, sticky notes are always fun, helps you physically kind of look at the timeline. You can make a map out of them as well. But yeah, physical sticky notes. Another good one is if you can't use your hands or you're doing something, you get an idea, like you're cooking and you got your hands messy, you can download a voice recorder app. You can get an awesome old voice recorder like my grandpa had when he was performing eye surgeries and stuff, so he could record his voice without using his hands. Or you can get one of the newer ones. There are some newer ones that are more easy to work with. But yeah, you can just get one for your phone, hit record, and while you're cooking, just let out that idea, let out that description you want to use of a character. So, we are going to move on to brainstorming. Us writers get some serious writer's block sometimes. Sometimes I feel like I go for months without writing. There are a lot of things you can brainstorm about. Anything to do with creative writing, anything to do with a story, your story that you're currently writing. You can do the plot, brainstorm about the characters, about a setting, about a theme, brainstorm a dialogue or a development that happens between two characters. You can, work on point of views, past, present tense. You can also, describe physical objects or an object in your story or an object you want to have in your story. You can do an event. You can do a historical event. You can do something that's currently happening in the world. You can describe your room, for gosh sakes. There's a lot of things you can brainstorm about, but the trouble is getting going on brainstorming about them. So number one, working on detailing. This is a big one for your stories. You always want to detail something. You want to say how something looks, or else the reader is not going to feel like they're there in the situation. So, the number one thing is describing an object. You can pick any object. It can be an object in front of you. It can be this little mic squishy thing that I got with the mic. It can also be, a fantasy land that you think about, something that comes up in your head. But a way to really push that brainstorming is to have a physical object in front of you to describe, because then you don't have to think of something to come up with. Or you can do something more elaborate, just like this Aztec pot. So if you're a history nerd, you might know a lot about that Aztec pot, so you have a lot of fancy words to use, like the fact that, orange on black, the specific pigment, specific symbols of a god, symbols of an animal, what that symbol represents, how it's used in the culture. Feel free to use that. You can use that in your description. But, some of us don't really know much about it, so we just want to work on describing that physical appearance to us. Even though we don't know the technical attributes to it, just describe what you see, describe it to the reader. So first I'm going to describe the pot. Kind of take a look at it, take a gander, is it tall, is it short, is it rotund, is it skinny? So let's do this here. Okay, so here's what I have so far. I'm just kind of describing, the general shape of it, what I'm seeing, where it is, its location. So I have the pot sat before me, staring at me from beneath the dusty shelf. It was shaped much like a vase, the neck of the pot skinny, the body of the pot rotund. So that's kind of the physical description, something simple, something that the reader can be like, oh, okay, that's where it is, that's what it, the basic of what it looks like. So now I want to describe those physical attributes to the detailing, the colors, the shapes that are on the pot. Maybe if it has any symbolism, that's when you would insert that historical evidence or, facts and stuff like that. So, here we go. Okay, so there's another basic description, kind of the body of the pot, what designs are on there, what the lip looks like, what the neck looks like, the face that protrudes out of that pot. So now I'm going to talk about what the pot feels like, what it smells like, more of these sensory things that really help the reader be like, oh, that smells weird, or whoa, I can kind of like feel that texture, is it smooth, is it like clay? If you describe it's like fired clay, that smooth glazed, oh my god, smooth glazed texture, then the reader is going to be like, oh, I felt that texture before, okay, I know what this feels like. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that's kind of the end of that one paragraph. So we kind of went through the general idea of the pot, established the location, established what it looked like, just the basics. Then we established the physical detail, the face protruding, the designs that are on the lip, neck, and the bottom of the pot. And then I went into what it feels like, kind of what it smells like. I didn't really do what it smells like in here, but then I kind of ended with a little bit of a hook, so the character feels that smoothness of the face, and it's rough like human skin, and then they're like, oh, what the, I've never felt a pot like that feels like a human, and next thing you know, maybe the character, maybe a human pops out from the pot, it emerges from that face, so that's why it felt like human skin, or rough human skin. So that's just where I could be going with this, and that right there just caused me to brainstorm. So that's going to keep me writing for a while, thinking about, oh, how can I continue, how can I describe that face protruding? That just gave me a whole story to write about. So that's just a way to get your brain brainstorming, is having an object in front of you or finding an object online. That's where I found the pot. Just having an object to kind of describe. One with a lot of detail gives you a lot more time to write, a lot more stuff to describe, which really enhances your ability to write in detail. Again, you saw how that brainstorm worked. It just, got me wanting to write about a person basically protruding from a pot and coming out. So that's a fun way to do things. I'll put the story up right here. Please pause it if you want to read it, the part that I wrote, but I am going to keep going for the lesson. Activity number 2 is coming up with names. So brainstorming a whole bunch of names for characters, possibly names for places, but I'm going to specifically be talking about names for characters, because that's sometimes what a lot of people struggle with to come up with, or just practicing coming up with names that you might want to use in future stories. Alright, so the first one we're going to do is just coming up with any names you can possibly think of. Maybe think of names that you've heard. You can even put your parents' name, any name that you know. Maybe you heard a name in the cafeteria last week and you want to add that. Feel free to add that. It's any names. It's a free-for-all, and it's okay to get stuck for a second. Sometimes you can set a timer, like 5 minutes or so. I'm only going to do about a minute, maybe less, but just write down as many names as you can. So, here we go. So that was just me filling up one whole page, and that was done pretty quickly. That was done in not very long. So these were all the names, and sometimes a name will spark another name. So I said Abel, and then I would say Ken, Drell, that's my boyfriend's name, but then I kind of thought of like mystical things, so Gypsy, Emerald, Savvy, and for some reason today I'm feeling the J names. So I have Jared, Gerald, now I can't even read my own damn handwriting. John, Jackson, Jade, we're looking at, Jasper. So a lot of J names today for some reason. We've also got me going through the C's, Carly, Carlos, Cam. So you can kind of see how that almost was rhyming, so that's kind of how it spurred up more names in my head. You can even be like, oh, that sounds like a really cute name to be together. First name Ashley, last name Ruth. You could do Astrid, Gypsy Astrid. That's an interesting one. So kind of connecting names up, trying to figure out after you write that list, what would be a cool last name? What would be a cool first, middle, last name? You could do like John Jackson Gideon. That's an interesting name. Feels like a movie name right there. So things like that, write down some different ideas in terms of first, last names, and you never know, you could come up with the perfect name for your character in your story. So that was a quick way to come up with a whole bunch of names. A whole bunch of names that you know, but if you're really looking for maybe a mystical name, a really weird name in a different language, you can use Google Translate. I think this is really interesting and a really cool way to figure things out and kind of learn about different languages. So what I did, and I still do for a lot of the stories or little brainstorms that I do, is I'll look on Google Translate, and it's just translate.google.com, just typing it in the browser bar. And you can go in and you can put an English word in one side in one box, and then it'll come up with a word in a different language. And there's a little drop-down menu on there that you drop down, you scroll through all the languages, you can pick language, and then you see what that word means in a different language. So, if you have something really important in a story that, there's a fire or something and there's a person that causes that fire, a cool little quirk you could do is you could have that person's last name be fire, but in a different language. So, if somebody is reading the book and they know the different language, and they say, oh, this name, first name, last name, and then they recognize that last name in their language or a language that they learned, they're like, I see you there, I saw that quirk. Number 3, I'm just going to go over this one kind of quickly, just because there's probably going to be another lesson on it. Just creating a storyboard. So just a beginning, middle, and end of a story. Anything you can think of, maybe if you need to think of the problem that the character has first, like they get stuck on a mountain, you kind of want to think about the beginning, middle, end. So the middle, or the conflict is the middle in this sense. So you want to write the beginning, like how did they get there, middle, the conflict, and then the end. So then the next one is going to be more of like a drawing thing. A lot of people they might brainstorm really well while writing stuff down, but some people can brainstorm by drawing things. You can always have a sketchbook. It can be specific to character development or just the random sketchbook that you use to sketch things. But a really cool thing to do, especially for settings in your story, is to draw a map. It's always a fun little art project to do and gives you a lot of fun things to think about. This was a treasure map that I drew. I actually taught my mom's second grade class how to draw some maps and write some stories, and this was one that we did. So then by looking at this map, you can kind of say like, oh, here's where the problem happened and here's where it was solved. So that's helping you also develop the plot. And just a quick throwback to my genres video, when I was talking about the fantasy and dystopian genre, that's a lot of world building. So if you're trying to brainstorm for a fantasy/dystopian genre, you can always draw a map, because that's building the world. That's a visual of the world. And that's why I think a lot of stories, when you flip to the first page of a story in a novel, you see a big old cool looking treasure map, or just a map in general, because then that reader can come back, place it, and kind of like draw that timeline where that character is. So it's really good to draw a map, especially for fantasy and dystopian novels. The last activity I'm going to talk about today for brainstorming is going to be using lyrics, or some of my favorite lyrics from songs, to write a detail in a story. So I do have a couple of songs that I listen to frequently, or just listen to once or twice, that I was like, oh, that is a really cool quote. You can do it with books too. You can take a quote from a book, be like, I really want to use that in my story. But song lyrics to me are much more like flamboyant, much more interesting. There's a lot of meaning to song lyrics. My number one quote that I still have yet to use in a story is, my ears can hear, my mouth can speak, my spirit talks, I know my soul believes. And it's by Aurora. It's from the song Running with the Wolves. It's a really cool song. Go check it out. Aurora's really awesome. And I want to use it in a story that, like, there's a lot of emotion. I want to use it in there because it's very, like, spiritual. It's very personal. And I think that's a big quote that a character would say that really shows a point in time where their life changes. And you can even do this by just, like, listening to random songs. You can do that by just looking up a song, scrolling through the lyrics. My second favorite that I actually did use and am using in my Leviathan story right now is this one. Of course it's by Pink Floyd, because Pink Floyd has some of the coolest lyrics, the most mysterious lyrics ever. So all these brainstorming tactics and everything along the lines that we talked about today, it's really important for looking into story ideas, looking when to create a story when you can't come up with a story, if you finish a story or you want to start a new story. It's also good for just practice. You don't always need to be working on a story or starting a new one. You can always just practice in general. But yeah, that's about it, guys. Thank you so much again for your support. I look forward to doing the next video, and you guys have a good weekend.